That today,
Yeah,
though, Dave,
yeah.
$1.15 billion. Two
You,
pieces.
you'd want to you'd want to hope it was Quattro Stagioni and all sorts on there. Hello and welcome to White Mirror, episode 9. We were having a little chat a couple of days ago, Simon and I, and we enjoyed the Cypherpunks episode so much, and quite a few of you did. So Simon came up with the idea of part two, and I can see that it's all going on around us there. Looks very exciting, Simon.
Yeah, so I've got to do a quick shout out, Dave. We've got had a
Go
couple of
on then.
comments from Robert Colmare, who mentioned Jack Dorsey. It's a really good idea.
Yeah.
We probably have to do an episode on Jack and Cash App and everything like that. And Max Yields, he mentioned Hal Finney, which is another really central guy in the Bitcoin story, and he's in this episode. So this one's for Max.
Oh, brilliant. Just before we get into that, if you're watching, please subscribe, like, and share. That's a really big thing for us. We're very new and we want to grow the community. So thank you very much if you could do that.
That would be
Okay,
great.
Si, where you go?
Yeah, so like Dave, last time we talked about David Chaum, Adam Back, Wei Dai, and Nick Szabo, the guys along the top here. And
The guys with the beard.
yeah,
Yeah.
these guys here. And this episode, they were talking about Hal Finney, and we've got Sirius, Marty Malmi, and we've got Laszlo Hanyeks and Gavin Andresen. So we'll talk about that.
Okay.
And they're the OGs. So, like I say, this is part 2 of the series, Cypherpunks to OGs.
Okay.
Let's dive in. So basically, the story that we're up to at the moment, because the last one was kind of covering from the 80s. Do you remember 80s, 90s, and into the early 2000s? And where we're picking up the story now is 2008, 2009. Do you remember the
Okay. Well,
financial crisis?
do I remember the financial crisis? Of course I do. Of everyone losing their homes and people posting their keys through their letterbox and doing a runner on their mortgages. Yeah,
That's
I remember
exactly
it really well.
right. The
Yeah.
financial crisis was raging around that time. Lehman Brothers
Yeah.
had collapsed in September 2008. Just weeks before, funnily enough, the Bitcoin white paper was published, like the idea in the white paper. But the governments were kind of bailing out banks. Like I say, Lehman's had collapsed. There's kind of like widespread public anger and distrust, basically, in the financial institutions, and rightly so.
Well,
Definitely
rightly
the
so. And they're still going somehow. I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
yeah, right. So the GFC, the global financial crisis, it exposed the fragility, I guess, of the centralized banking systems and all of that. But
Yeah.
it's funny the timing. So indeed, that's exactly the point in time that we left the last episode, and Satoshi Nakamoto had come onto the scene. Now, Bitcoin had built on all of those technologies that we've talked about in the last episode. And
Yeah.
right now we're getting going. It's actually the very first Genesis block, like the first block in the blockchain, was mined on January the 3rd, 2009. And there's a bit of a funny story about that Genesis block because it contained inside that block like a message, a secret message. But for anybody that actually looks, it's there in plain text. But most people don't. It's kind of like hidden, but there. Because you can actually store a message as well as all these transactions that are going on. And Satoshi had put in the headline from the Financial Times: Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And
Right.
this is kind of like, in a way, I guess it's kind of like a message that was about the banking system and where Bitcoin was hopefully going to take things.
So let me get this right. That was in the first mined block
Yeah,
of of Bitcoin,
yeah,
or
yeah. It's a
wow.
blockchain, right? And they've got all the transactions
Right.
in each block. But in there as well, you can
Right.
stick some messages and other things. And that message was in there. He put that
Wow.
in there as kind of like a quite Yeah, so it gives you
That's a
goosebumps.
massive one of those to the banking system, right?
You might have to kind of put a blur around that, Dave, when we put this out.
I doubt it.
Yeah, but
YouTube.
I guess you're right though. That's exactly what it is. But
Yeah,
just days later after that, the first Bitcoin software was released, and anyone was able to join the network. So actually, it's around this time as well that the first transaction took place. But we'll talk about that in a second because I want to talk about the OGs and why this is called Cypherpunks to OGs.
it just is this not a bunch of geeks just trying to be cool, original
Yeah,
gangsters?
well, it's funny because it's actually not these guys on the left. It was not that kind of meaning. And I must admit, Dave, I cringed when I first heard original
It's a bit,
gangsters. What's that? Yeah,
it's tiny temper language, isn't it? You know,
right, right. But it's an interesting story. It doesn't come
yeah.
from kind of like the 1920s, 30s, or anything like that. Moreover, it's kind of a bit more kind of comes from hip hop culture in the late 80s and the early
Who's that
90s.
dude?
Can you do that, Dave? Is that I've seen you do a bit of
I'm really, yeah, I'm actually, I can do that, and I can do body popping as well, but it doesn't go down so well these days in nightclubs.
that?
You look a bit of a knob.
So the OG term, it comes from the original gangs. It comes from like this hip hop culture, and it's kind of like the founding
Yeah,
members of a street gang, originals, the
yeah,
first guys in a particular field, or they're highly respected, authentic guys.
yeah.
So yeah, but of course these guys, same as the last time, the cypherpunks, they were looking for decentralization, individual autonomy, and freedom from centralized authorities, and that's what Bitcoin was all about, and that's what they wanted. And Falfini, now this guy is kind of often referred to as some people actually think that this might have been Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yes, I was going to say I'd heard that, and what do you think?
Well, it's a really good one, actually. He's a very good candidate to actually be Satoshi, but he was effectively the guy that was turning all the cryptographic ideas into reality. He was running the first Bitcoin nodes, right? He wasn't a
Yeah,
loud guy. He just shipped code. He ran nodes, like I say, and he proved that Bitcoin could actually run in the real world. But he was the first guy to receive a transaction, and he received 10 Bitcoin from Satoshi. So this is one of the data points. I mean, he was there right at the very beginning. So the first
right.
transaction, it's kind of like
Mhm.
like a test transaction that they were making at that point in time, 10 Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And I guess it didn't have any value at that point, or if it did, it would have been just a few cents. But
yeah.
I mean, today now, what 10 Bitcoin is about just over $1 million as a test transaction. And Hal received that from Satoshi. But get this.
Oh, yeah.
So you're asking, like, is he could he have been Satoshi? Here's one other thing that's quite interesting. I laugh when I heard this. He lived about a block away from a guy called Dorian Nakamoto, and this is a Japanese guy that was totally unrelated, and he's had to kind of express his innocence, nothing to do with Bitcoin all the way through. But people keep using his photo because I was going to put his photo in Dorian's, but yeah, I mean that's an interesting story in its own
It,
right. But
it's a possibility that he just walked past his letterbox and he kept seeing his name every time he walked past,
are they friends? I
and
don't know. Did he just grab
yeah,
that guy's name and use it? I don't. Satoshi Nakamoto. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's an interesting one with
Mm.
Hal. We might do a full episode on Hal because I think the story here. I'm just kind of going through quite a few of the guys, but he's a very interesting character. But I wanted to move
Okay,
on to Marty Malmi, aka Sirius. That's his pseudonym in all of the forums and stuff. Marty appeared very, very early on in the operational story, and what he was doing, he was kind of
okay.
writing the software, the wallet software, the first versions of all of those things. He was running nodes, running seed nodes, so that one Bitcoin node could find other nodes and kind of look each other up in kind of like an address book form. He was running all of those
Pretty
seed.
clever guy.
Ah, yeah, these guys are all super clever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but it was him that was kind of like, if things failed at 2 a.m. in the morning, he was there answering forum questions and he was replying with fixes, helping people get on board, helping people run other nodes to grow the network. And it's just that kind of consistent effort that from people like this that allowed it to, go from
yeah,
something experimental to something reachable by a lot more users, which was absolutely
yeah.
critical after Hal's and some Satoshi's test things. So yeah, he's definitely one of the OGs.
Another beard and another one.
Laszlo Hanyecks. And this is a funny story. So he was definitely one of the early adopters, Dave, who helped to move Bitcoin from the experiment to the real world. But I definitely call him an early adopter. He was actually the one of the first people that actually made a commercial Bitcoin transaction. Okay.
Wow.
And I guess
Okay.
it's these, I'm about to say this story, it's these kind of like small acts, like the humanness that kept or started Bitcoin really growing in the community. So basically, he became famous for buying two pizzas with Bitcoin.
Okay.
Okay,
This is when I first heard about Bitcoin.
right,
Um, that is it. I remember it very clearly because the mainstream media picked up on it
right.
and it was everywhere. And we were
Yeah.
we were talking about it at work.
He put a forum post out um that said, "I'll pay 10,000 bitcoins for a couple of pizzas, like maybe two large ones, so I have some left over for the next day." This is this is 2010, May 22nd. And do you know, it actually took 2 days for someone to take him up because the actual post sat there for those 2 days. I guess people were quite skeptical. What's this? And eventually, this guy Jeremy Sturdivant took him up on the offer. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Jerkos is kind of his pseudonym. Um,
Pardon? Jer-
it,
Who?
Jerkos,
Jerko.
yeah,
Oh, okay, right. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
wasn't definitely wasn't instant, and yeah, I guess because you could say 10,000 Bitcoin at that time, we could translate it, and on that date was around $40, right? And I guess that's somewhat reasonable. You kind of want someone to get you two pizzas and deliver them to you, and you're willing to pay something that's worth about $40, and he was paying in Bitcoin. That today,
Yeah.
though, Dave,
Yeah.
$1.15 billion, two
You,
pizzas.
you'd want to hope it was Quattro Stagioni and all sorts on there, everything on there, all
Better
the
be a really
trimmings.
good pizzas.
Bloody brilliant pizza from Italy, obviously.
Yeah, that
Oh
pizza
my
trade
God.
made Bitcoin real to people, not just coders. And I think it's these kind of cultural stories, though, that
Yeah.
help take the technology across into everyday life. And
It's
that's
interesting
2010.
that because it's sorry to cut across, but it is interesting because I think this is when it became mainstream. This is when we all first heard about it because it was in the press and everything. And a lot of people, I think, a lot of really smart people thought this is the way forward and became early adopters as well because of that.
Right.
And I know a guy who saw that and he went in on Bitcoin early and he never sold. He never sold.
Amazing.
He hung on to it and he became the first person to buy a luxury yacht with Bitcoin. He did it a couple of years ago. He bought a luxury yacht with Bitcoin.
It's these stories. It's incredible, really.
Yeah, yeah,
Laszlo,
amazing.
he's a pretty central character.
All because of a couple of pizzas. Not bad.
Right. And then Gavin Andresen, again, he's like Satoshi was stepping back around 2011, 12. I can't remember exact time, but he was handing over, and Gavin took up the role of lead maintainer of Bitcoin Core, the main core
Yeah,
software. Um,
yeah,
was working between 2010 2012 after Satoshi was stepping back, and but he was definitely again turning the experiment into the real community. He was helping the community grow. Um,
yeah.
and one the interesting story about Gavin was he ran this simple idea of a website that gave away free Bitcoin, and they call that a faucet. It's still use this. It's kind of like the you just turn on the tap, you get some free coins, and a lot of cryptocurrencies they have faucets, especially in their kind of test net for developers and things. They can go and get some test a test version of the token from a faucet without any real value. But in those
Okay.
days, Bitcoin was so low value that Gavin was giving a lot away. You could literally go to the website that Gavin had created and you could complete a capture, you know. I'm not sure if it was a traffic light thing, how many traffic lights can you see in this picture? It was some sort of a
I,
puzzle that they were,
yeah, still can't do those.
yeah,
I'm
right, they're a bit
too
annoying
I'm too
sometimes.
OCD.
But I tell you what, if you were going to get the amount of Bitcoin off, it would be well worth it. So he was kind of
Yeah.
giving away, if I have got this right, 5 Bitcoin per claim. So basically, you go to this
Not
website, you
bad.
complete a capture, you get your 5 Bitcoin, which was obviously worth very little at the time. I think obviously would have been worth a few cents or maybe less than $1. But 5 Bitcoin now again is over half a million, nearly $600,000. That if you'd
Oh,
got that at that time for free,
not bad. I mean, it's not that long ago. When you think about it, it's not that long ago.
yeah,
What kind of investment would you have to procure to make that sort of money in
well,
the central system? It's just impossible.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, effectively, Gavin
Yeah,
had run this
amazing.
kind of this Faucet website, and I think he initially seeded it with about 1,100 Bitcoin. So the amount that he was, and then he kind of kept reseeding it with more Bitcoin for this faucet to work, right? And
Yeah.
so basically, I think the total amount was nearly 20,000 Bitcoin, 19,000 odd Bitcoin that it eventually put into this website, which is now worth
Wow.
2.29 billion that he was basically given away. But this is the thing that got people using Bitcoin, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. It was essential, is what you're saying. It needed to happen.
right. Without Gavin's stewardship, I mean, it wasn't just this. This is kind of like one of the childish, silly things that was there is kind of like, but his main role was, like I say, running the main Bitcoin's core software. And without his hands-on leadership between like 2010 and 2012, uh, I guess that Bitcoin might have just stayed niche, a white paper.
Mm,
It's these guys that got it going into like a,
mm,
a durable open source network. That a lot
mm.
of respect to these guys.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's these four, and we've gone quite quickly through them just for some kind of anecdotal stories and things. But we might, I'd love to hear in the comments if people want me to talk a bit more about certain characters. Or dive into any of the people that were in the cypherpunks that we talked about in the last episode and all the technology and things that went before it.
Mm.
But Dave, I might have to just do the disclaimer at the end of this video.
Okay.
So, as always, none of this is financial advice. Crypto investments are high risk. The past is no guide to the future. There's no guarantees of returns or profits. You must do your own research. Crypto is largely unregulated in many countries. Tax laws do apply, and you should seek tax advice if necessary. White Mirror does not endorse any particular cryptocurrency.
Thank you, Simon. That's absolutely perfect. Well, thanks for that. I enjoyed that. I still don't know if they should be called OGs, but we'll give them that, because now, obviously, the wealth that is procured from Bitcoin will let them have that.
They've certainly
But
done something
anyway,
for us,
listen,
that's for sure.
Oh, they certainly have, yeah. And well, anyway, thanks for that, Simon. It's really interesting to get an insight on all that sort of stuff that I know nothing about, and now I do. It's brilliant. Thank you. Again, everybody, if you could subscribe, like, and share our content, share it far and wide. We'd really appreciate that. Thanks for watching. I hope you got some information from this, and please leave any comments. That's also something that Simon can answer. I can't really do much about that at the moment. All right, Si, thank you very much for that.
Cheers, Dave.